Man's Opinion. Today I am reviewing the new Elton John Broadway musical Tammy Faye, with music by Elton John, lyrics by Jake Shears, book by James Graham, directed by Rupert Goold, and choreographed by Lynne Page, running through December 8th at the Palace Theater at 1564 Broadway in New York City. Come raise the roof at my Patreon page, where you can become a patron for as little as $1 a month. Your support helps meet expenses here and my classic cinema podcast, Yesterday's Matinee, which is wrapped recording on our series on the George A. Romero Living Dead franchise. Thank you to my Neo and Hamilton tier patrons, and welcome to the new ones. A link will be in the description. Well, that didn't last long, did it? The announcement for the closing of Tammy Faye happened before I could even get the script for this episode written, marking the second Broadway flop for Elton John, the first being his 2006 Lestat. Still, I wouldn't blame the problems with Tammy Faye on the music. John's score is appropriately energetic in that vibrant evangelical tent revival way, with some genuine salient moments for Katie Braben, who, in spite of all the show's problems, still gives an impassioned performance as the titular Tammy Faye. The problem is the book, which is a muddled mess as we follow the rise of the televangelist movement with personalities like Jerry Falwell, played by Michael Cerveris, Jimmy Swaggart, played by Ian Lasseter, Pat Robertson, played by Andy Taylor, and of course, Jim Baker, played by Christian Borle. Tammy and Jim are presented as the odd ducks of the bunch as they start off their televangelist network, Praise the Lord, through Ted Turner, also played by Andy Taylor. Their programming comes off a bit less fire and brimstone like their rival colleagues, and Tammy's liberal sensibilities allow them to spotlight topics like the AIDS epidemic with a more gracious hand than people like Falwell and Robertson. This is the part where the musical falls apart as we consider the repercussions of what happens with the Bakers as they get in money troubles with the IRS. The direction and portrayal of Jim Baker by Borle makes him such a naive buffoon, coupled with Tammy being portrayed as being so much smarter than Jim. It makes the believability of everything that happens throughout the show seem a bit absurd. Jim is portrayed as an imbecile, yet he was able to grift millions of dollars from followers. Tammy is portrayed as intelligent, but apparently not so intelligent that she doesn't realize that Jim hasn't been financially responsible with the company. We're required to go on this journey with them and jump these narrative hurdles that don't make much sense, as the characterizations don't match the actions of the characters. Now, James Graham, who I think did an exceptional job with making unlikable people tolerable enough to watch with his play Ink, I think he wants us to think that Jim and Tammy were too naive and kind for the toxic, unholy wasteland that is the world of televangelism. I'm not disagreeing that it is a toxic, unholy wasteland. It is. Maybe they weren't cut out for televangelism, but that doesn't negate the fact that they grifted millions and millions of dollars, flaunting their wealth on television, preaching a prosperity gospel. They both do it, and then we're supposed to believe that Tammy knew nothing about the fraud he was convicted of? At least not even question it before it happened? She's supposed to be the smart one. Yes, Jim cheated on her, and we sympathize with her about that. And yes, she was an advocate for the LGBTQ community, but there were far less controversial Christian celebrities out there who are just as much advocates, if not more so, for civil rights, who deserve a musical about their lives before Tammy Faye. I found the show very hard to accept, especially in the political climate the United States is currently in. These con artists are a big reason why the country is where it is today, and we're supposed to look at the Bakers and say, oh sure, they did some bad things, but they, especially Tammy Faye, weren't as bad as, say, the Falwells or Pat Robertson. No, not at all. This country is not in a place where it is ready to look past the sins of the Bakers, even Tammy Faye's, in what feels like a whitewashed musical. It's these televangelists' predatory attitude toward the needy that suckered millions of people into the alt-right movement where they remain today. And yes, Jerry Falwell and his brood, for lack of a better word, were in part responsible for the fall of Jim Baker. Not arguing with that. But where did all Baker's people go? They went to Falwell. They went to Robertson. They went to them. They didn't have the discipline and the biblical training to recognize that they were being fleeced by everyone. The musical tries to get that across with references laced throughout the script of how the televangelist movement was the precursor to the MAGA movement, but it is impossible to look at everyone else, at the Falwells, Robertsons, and more, with disdain and then give a soft pass on the Bakers. I should give credit where credit is due. Michael Cerveris is great as Jerry Falwell, strutting across the stage with pompous self-righteous indignation as he attempts to bring down what he views is the unholy programming of Jim and Tammy Faye. And like I said, Braben is marvelous as Tammy Faye. Her closing number, If You Came to See Me Cry, is some of the best songwriting I've heard from Elton John in years. The massive gospel numbers are exuberant, and Lynne Page's choreography is appropriately energetic. I think Bunny Christie's scenic design is fantastic. The set looks like they're pulled right out of the Praise the Lord studio set, and I love the wall of screens that are used to project the footage of them performing live. Finn Ross doesn't overdo the video design and keeps the presentation tempered to fit the scene artistically. Still, Tammy Faye is a hot mess of a story. The events that happen, mixed with the attempts to make complicated characters seem empathetic, doesn't work. That, coupled with an ill-timed release, opening immediately after an election that has the United States in one of the most bitterly emotional places it's been in for decades, it is no small wonder why Tammy Faye is closing in a couple weeks. But I'm only one man's opinion, so be sure to leave your comments below. If you'd like to see Tammy Faye, I'll leave a link in the description where you can get tickets. Also in the description will be links to my Patreon and Spotify pages, as well as my social media tags where you can support my work. You can also support me by liking and sharing this video, subscribing to the channel, and clicking the notification bell to be alerted to future reviews. My next review will be the Broadway revival of the musical Elf. Thank you for watching, and I will see you at the theater.